To be or not to be, that is not the question. I decided long ago to be. With me, it's what to be. Make me some suggestion, good or bad, which is the best for me. If you're after fun and laughter, this aggravates you. Some reformer says a warmer climate awaits you. If it's naughty to rouge your lips, shake your shoulders and twist your hips. Let a lady confess, I wanna be bad. If it's naughty to vamp the men, sleep each morning till after 10, then the answer is yes, I wanna be bad. This thing of being a good little goody is all very well.
Hey, you fans of American popular culture of the 20th century. I'm here in the Silver Lake Hills. I'm a little bit east of Hollywood proper. And I'm going to take you to where Norma Jean Mortensen, who later became the fabulous Marilyn Monroe, I want to take you to where her mother, Gladys Baker, at age 23, moved in with her gal pal supervisor from Consolidated Film Industries, Grace McKee. Gladys was 23, Grace was 30. It was the jazz age, the era of the flapper, and they moved together at 1211 Hyperion Avenue, and they lived at this apartment for 1 year and 5 months until Gladys got married to Martin Edward Mortensen, the guy whose name is on Norma Jean Mortensen's birth certificate. And Marilyn Monroe, she would have been 93 this June 1st in 2 days, Saturday 2019. So let's go over there and let's see where the two flappers in that fantastic great economic era of the Roaring 20s where they lived together. And so follow me, let's go. Now, a lot of this area right here, it's still extant. It looks like it did when Gladys and Grace lived here in the 1920s, as you can see. Although there is slight modifications in some of these houses, and that right there, we're about a couple of 100 feet from Sunset Boulevard. We're north. So let's go over there to where these two young flappers, Gladys and Grace, lived together, great pals. She stayed in the life, Grace did, for a long time, until at least 1952 when she died. Grace did, in the life of little Norma Jean. In fact, if it wasn't for Grace imprinting constantly in the mind of little Norma Jean, how she would one day become the most beautiful woman in the world, along with one of the most famous actresses of the 20th century, we wouldn't have had a young Norma Jean grow up into that fabulous, beautiful Marilyn Monroe. So this apartment, it's between Effie, right there, as you can see, Effie Street, and then there's a street down there. I think I don't know what street that is, but this is the Silver Lake Hills. And if you've ever seen Charlie Chaplin's films from 1914 at the Max Sennett Studios, these are the hills that you see him doing his hijinks and rollicking in all those great films of 1914. This is where he did mostly all the films for Max Sennett. And as you can see, everything's pretty much original. And thankfully, like I said, that apartment there where Grace and Gladys lived is still extant. Now, what little bit I know of architectural motif, that's that right over there where they lived at 1211 Hyperion, is what they call storybook architecture. And these streets are really steep. In fact, this Effie, if you go that way, there's this street, it inclines about, I'm talking about 70 degrees. I'm not kidding. Okay, so let's go over there. This is Thursday, and I think that it's the 30th of May. Now you can't see the Hollywood sign, even though it was installed there in 1923 when Gladys and Grace moved at this apartment. There's a knoll in front of it. So here you go. This is where the two young flappers. Women's suffrage had just been passed in 1919, and now they worked with two guys. One was named Olin G. Stanley, and another fellow was named Charles Stanley Gifford. He was the boyfriend of Gladys at Consolidated, and he said that they were what they called good time gals, and he said that there was a lot of fast living here at this apartment, and he said they always had bootleg liquor. And at that time, what with prohibition, you could always get liquor because of all the Hollywood wealth, the fame, the famous always having the ability to get their hands on that liquor, even though it's prohibited. He said they were always having beach parties, and they were always renting out cabins at Big Bear, and they were making great, fantastic money. They were negative splicers, and what their job was to cut the negatives for the dailies for the next day, for the directors and producers and executives to watch the progress of a certain film. And what the editor would do, he would mark it where the splicers would cut it, and then they would reattach it in another department so that they could see the final negative release. Okay, here it is, 1211. Other than the fact it's got that goofy ass sliding door, it's original, as you can see. And this is where all the partying and the boozing and the carousing, this is where it all happened. Imagine, suspend your disbelief and imagine you're here in 1923. And now this is the same place where Gladys was living when she met the meter man, whose name was Martin Edward Mortensen. And then he said that Olin G. Stanley, he said that at the time when Martin Edward Mortensen came into the life of Gladys, he said he was impressed because Gladys was religious. Well, she wasn't religious, but at the time, her and Grace, they happened to be dabbling in Christian Science at the time, so he was impressed with that. So he asked her to marry him, and then they got married, and she left this apartment, unless he lived here with Grace and Gladys. I can't find that information. And she only stayed married with him for 4 months, and then after she got divorced, or rather left him in February of 1924, she moved with her mother to Venice Beach, where Della always lived, pretty much. And now, the way Gladys got her last name Baker, she had married a guy named John Newton Baker. She was 14 years old, and this guy was 26 years old, John Newton Baker. And to get her out of the house, because at the time Della was dating this guy named Charles Granger, and he was a successful, he was actually a supervisor for an oil drilling company. She swore that Grace was 18, and this was in 1917. So she stayed married with him for 4 years, and then she had 2 children from this John Noon Baker. She had a son named Jack who died in his 20s. I guess that would have been sometime in the late 1930s. And then she had a daughter named Bernice. So when she walked out after 4 years with John Noon Baker, he took those children to Kentucky, and on the divorce complaint that Gladys had said when she filed for divorce, that she said that John Noon Baker had called her vile names and spoke profane language in her presence. And that he had kicked her and hit her numerous times, even though she was a good and loyal wife. And he said that he couldn't put up with her lewd and lascivious conduct. So 14 years old, she was divorced by I guess 18, and then she moved back with her mom Della to Venice Beach, and then she lived in Venice Beach with Della until she moved east to Hollywood, and she got that job at Consolidated Film Industries, and then Grace was her supervisor. And now a lot of people don't realize this one factoid I'm going to say, that even though she got pregnant while working at Consolidated 10 months after leaving Martin Edward Mortensen, a lot of people don't know this other factoid. Martin Edward, even though he met her here as a meter man, he was working throughout all the time they weren't living together at Consolidated. And they said that he was always trying to win her back. Now, even though she was dating off and on that fellow I just mentioned, Charles Stanley Granger, it's not far-fetched to imagine that she would have went out on a date with her ex-husband, got pregnant, and then because on the birth certificate of Norma Jean, Gladys put Martin Edward Mortensen as the father. So why, if he wasn't the father, why would he put it? Plus, Martin Edward was a Norwegian immigrant. A lot of people don't know this. Now, if you look at the skin tone of a young Norma Jean, she's got that Nordic skin color, and you could tell she had Nordic blood. So there you go. Let's squash that questionable, like, who is the biological father of Norma Jean. There you go. See, he was a Norwegian immigrant. She looked Nordic as a little baby, and her original hair color was red, and it was wavy. And but when you see her as a baby, she's a real white-haired towhead. So okay, so I'm going to take you fans of Norma Jean now. I'm going to take you about 20 miles southeast of here. I'm going to take you to Norwalk, California, where Norma Jean's mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, was committed to Norwalk State Hospital January of 1935, when Norma Jean, she was 9 years old, and Gladys stayed at Norwalk State Hospital for 3 years and 3 months. So there you go, 1211 Hyperion Avenue. Now, in the other video I did of Prospect Studios a couple of weeks back, I mentioned that Gladys and Grace, they live six blocks east of here. This is where I was talking about, and this is a place where they would come home to, passing every day, Talmadge Street, named after Norma Talmadge, who Gladys named little Norma Jean after. And so there you go. the Jazz Age, the 1920s. Now, here's another factoid about this area. This is the stomping grounds, the former stomping grounds in the early World War II era of the King of Cool himself, Steve McQueen, where he ran with his ragtag band of delinquent pals stealing hubcaps. So if you would have come here in 1942, you would have run into the little ruffian at that time, Steve McQueen. Okay, so here you go, one more time. I'm surprised they were able to build this right here, this apartment building, but the structure that was here probably was so rotted they had to tear it down. They didn't have a choice. Okay, so the Roaring 20s, as you all know, you students of history, that fantastic